Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is officially a commoner after being formally stripped of his last remaining honours by the King.
The royal palace has just experienced an enormous surprise that took everyone by storm. Reports indicate that Meghan is feeling quite distressed after Andrew revealed something truly shocking to her late at night. What exactly did Andrew say that left Meghan so taken aback? And how did it create significant turmoil for the royal family? Join us as we delve into the intricate tales of drama, familial conflicts, and political maneuvering, the memoir that changed everything. Virginia Giuffre had been sharing her story about Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and the powerful men who she said hurt her for many years. However, it wasn't until her book, Nobody's Girl, was published after her death in October 2025 that her serious claims really shocked the British royal family. Sadly, Giuffre took her own life in April 2025, leaving behind a written account that explained years of mistreatment, with Prince Andrew being a big part of her story. The book became an instant bestseller, leaping to #1 on Amazon even before its official release date. Readers around the world were confronted with Giuffre's detailed accounts of being forced to have intimate relations with Andrew on 3 separate occasions when she was just 17 years old. She described meeting the prince at Ghislaine Maxwell's London home, where Maxwell had told her that, just like Cinderella, she would meet a handsome prince that night. According to Giuffre's account, Andrew had correctly guessed her age, and then mentioned that his own daughters were only slightly younger, a detail that made the subsequent events all the more disturbing. What made the memoir particularly damaging was its emotional authenticity and the specific details Giuffre provided about Andrew's behavior and attitudes. She wrote that the prince had seemed to believe that having intimate relations with her was his birthright, an entitled attitude that she had thought about many times in the years since. The book also included allegations that Andrew's team had tried to hire internet trolls to harass her during their legal battle, and that he had attempted to dig up dirt on her through his security personnel. Most devastatingly, Giuffre wrote about how Andrew had made it difficult for her lawyers to serve him papers by fleeing to Queen Elizabeth's Balmoral Castle in Scotland and hiding behind its well-guarded gates. The timing of the memoir's release couldn't have been worse for the royal family. King Charles was already dealing with his own health challenges following a cancer diagnosis, and the monarchy was working hard to maintain public support during a period of transition. The graphic nature of Giuffre's allegations, combined with the sympathy generated by her tragic death, created a perfect storm of public outrage that would force the king's hand in ways that no one had anticipated. Just weeks earlier, Andrew's desperate attempts to hold on. Even as pressure mounted following the publication of Giuffre's memoir, Prince Andrew initially refused to accept the reality of his situation. 4 days before the book hit shelves, he announced that he would voluntarily relinquish his Duke of York title, hoping that this preemptive move might satisfy critics and allow him to maintain some vestige of his former status. In his statement, Andrew claimed he was putting duty to my family and country first, while continuing to vigorously deny all allegations against him. But the gesture proved to be too little, too late. Behind the scenes, Andrew was fighting tooth and nail to maintain his privileged lifestyle at Royal Lodge, the 30-room mansion on the Windsor estate that he had called home for decades. He had signed a 75-year lease on the property back in 2003, paying just £1 million up front with the agreement that he would handle all maintenance and refurbishment costs. Now, with King Charles determined to evict him, Andrew was searching desperately for any legal technicality or delaying tactic that might allow him to stay. According to sources close to the family, Andrew made extraordinary demands in exchange for leaving quietly. He reportedly wanted a massive financial settlement, with some insiders claiming he sought as much as $99 million before agreeing to vacate the premises. Beyond money, Andrew demanded a full-time staff, including a cook, gardener, housekeeper, and driver, plus round-the-clock police protection at his new residence. He made it clear that he expected his future accommodation to maintain the same standard of living he had enjoyed at Royal Lodge, despite the fact that he no longer held any official royal position or income beyond his naval pension. The standoff between Andrew and the king dragged on for weeks, with Andrew using every possible delay to slow down the eviction process. He knew that the longer he could hold out at Royal Lodge, the more leverage he might have in negotiations. Reports suggested that he was particularly concerned about what would happen after he left, as the Crown estate had made it clear that the property was in such poor condition that he might not receive any compensation at all once the cost of repairs was factored in. The dilapidated state of Royal Lodge, with its dampness, peeling paint, and structural problems, was yet another embarrassment for a man who had once enjoyed unlimited access to royal resources. The king's difficult decision. For King Charles, the decision to strip his younger brother of all royal titles was one of the most painful choices of his reign. Despite Andrew's scandals and the public outcry surrounding his association with Jeffrey Epstein, Charles had long hoped that a retirement from public life might be enough to contain the damage. The two brothers had shared a childhood and a lifetime of experiences within the royal family, and Charles understood all too well how difficult it would be for Andrew to lose everything that had defined him, his identity since birth. By late October 2025, the king understood that small actions wouldn't be enough anymore. Virginia Giuffre's book had made people very angry again, and surveys showed that most British people wanted Andrew to lose any special role in the royal family. Experts said that if Andrew stayed even a little connected to the family, it could hurt the monarchy's reputation for a long time, especially since younger people were already losing support for it. King Charles was under a lot of pressure from his oldest son, Prince William. William had been asking for strong action against Andrew for a long time. He knew that one day he would be king, and for the monarchy to survive, it needed to stay important and respected in today's Britain. William thought that keeping Andrew in the royal family was sending the wrong message about taking responsibility and having good values. He had told his dad that they needed to fix the situation with Andrew before it could hurt William's future as king, and that waiting would only make things worse. On October 30th, 2025, Buckingham Palace released the historic statement that would seal Andrew's fate. The announcement was brief but devastating in its finality. His Majesty had initiated a formal process to remove Andrew's style, titles, and honors. He would no longer be known as Prince Andrew or His Royal Highness. Instead, he would be called Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, a name that stripped away every marker of royal status he had possessed. The statement also served formal notice that Andrew must surrender his lease on Royal Lodge and move to alternative private accommodation, effectively ending his residence at one of the most prestigious addresses on the Windsor estate. The shocking precedent and what it means. The choice to take away Andrew's title as a prince shocked many people, not just his family. Experts in law and royal history pointed out that this was the first time since 1936 that a high-ranking British royal had been so openly pushed aside by the current king. By using a special legal document called letters patent, King Charles showed he was ready to use all his power to keep the royal family's good name safe, even if it meant making big, personal sacrifices. The situation became even more important because of the words in the palace statement. The announcement clearly said that these actions are necessary, even though he still denies the accusations against him. This was important because it showed that the king was taking action not because Andrew admitted to doing anything wrong, but because the accusations and Andrew's connection to Jeffrey Epstein had become so harmful that they could hurt the whole royal family. Basically, the statement recognized that sometimes protecting the monarchy meant making tough choices, even if it involved family members. Andrew's loss of status had big effects. He would no longer get the large yearly allowance that helped pay for his lifestyle since Queen Elizabeth died. His security team, which he used to get automatically as a royal family member, would now have to be paid for by King Charles if Andrew wanted any protection at all. Most importantly, Andrew would have to move from Royal Lodge to a much smaller house on the Sandringham estate. Reports said he would be moved to a simple home that was nothing like the big mansion he was leaving behind. People who follow the royal family noticed that Andrew's daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, would still have their titles, even though their dad was in trouble. This choice showed that the king wanted to punish Andrew but didn't want to hurt his daughters. However, some family insiders said that Andrew worked hard to keep his daughters' titles safe. He even made a secret deal with Charles to make sure Beatrice and Eugenie wouldn't be affected by their father's problems. The fact that such negotiations were necessary highlighted just how completely Andrew's position within the family had collapsed. Harry and Meghan's growing alarm. In their big house in Montecito, California, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were watching what was happening with Prince Andrew. They felt both curious and worried. Many people said that they were surprised by how quickly King Charles took action against his brother. If the king could take away everything from Andrew, even the title he was born with, what did that mean for Harry and Meghan's own royal titles? The timing of Andrew's downfall was particularly unsettling for the Sussexes because it came at a moment when their relationship with the rest of the royal family remained deeply fractured. Harry and Meghan had stepped back from royal duties in 2020 and moved to California, where they had built new careers in media production and public speaking. They had agreed to stop using their His Royal Highness and Her Royal Highness styling in official capacities, but they had continued to use the titles Duke and Duchess of Sussex, which had become central to their public brand and business ventures. For Meghan in particular, the implications of losing her Duchess title were reportedly causing serious anxiety. Sources claimed that she had been panicked and defiant about the possibility, telling friends that, "No one's taking my Duchess away." According to these insiders, Meghan understood that so much of her and Harry's influence in media, business, and charity work came from being the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Without those titles, the entire dynamic of their public presence would shift dramatically, and they might lose access to the very platforms and opportunities that had made their California venture viable. Royal correspondent Rob Shooter reported that an insider told him Meghan was equally affected by the Andrew news as Harry, understanding immediately that a precedent had now been set. If a monarch could remove both a dukedom and a princely title from his own brother, then Harry's titles were no longer as secure as they had once seemed. The fact that Harry was the king's son rather than his brother provided some protection, but royal experts noted that Prince William would have the power to strip those titles once he became king, and William was known to hold deep resentments about Harry's public criticisms of the royal family. The royal bombshell. Picture this. It's precisely 9:15 on a grey London morning. Behind the imposing doors of Clarence House, an emergency session has been convened in absolute secrecy. Who's in the room? The king's closest legal advisors, two senior courtiers whose faces are drained of color, and the king's private secretary, clutching a folder marked in bold red letters, "Confidential Domestic Action." The air is thick. You could hear a pin drop. And then, King Charles III, visibly trembling, his voice cracking under the weight of what he's about to say, delivers the words that will echo through history. "I intend to separate from Queen Camilla." Can you imagine that moment? The silence that must have followed. Witnesses say his hand shook as he spoke. His eyes, red, exhausted, could barely meet those of his advisors. This was not a decision made lightly. This was a man on the edge of emotional collapse, forced to choose between his wife and his crown. And here's what makes this even more shocking. Only a select few had been informed beforehand. Prince William, Princess Anne, the Lord Chamberlain. That's it. No official statement. No press briefing. just controlled detonation behind closed palace walls. According to one senior advisor who was present, Charles said something that will haunt everyone who heard it. "This has become untenable. The trust is broken." Now, you might be wondering, what could possibly drive a king to divorce his queen? We're talking about a man who spent 30 years defending Camilla, who endured public hatred, who risked his reputation, who slowly, painstakingly rebuilt her image from royal mistress to queen consort. What could shatter that bond so completely? The answer lies in a dossier, a damning intelligence report delivered just 8 days before that fateful meeting, and media manipulation linked directly to Camilla. It was manipulation cloaked in strategy. And when Charles read that report, when he saw the evidence of what his own wife had been doing behind his back, something inside him broke. This marks the first royal divorce of a sitting sovereign in over 400 years. Think about that. Not since the reign of Henry VIII has a reigning monarch taken such a step. And we all know how that ended. The monarchy has weathered storms before. Edward VIII's abdication in 1936, Charles and Diana's catastrophic split in 1996. But this is different. This comes at a time when the crown is already under intense public scrutiny, when trust in the institution hangs by a thread. For Charles, this moment isn't just personal, it's historic, it's constitutional, it's existential. But what exactly did Camilla do? What was in that intelligence report that pushed the king past his breaking point? Let's dive into the betrayal that broke the crown. Prince Andrew's former maid reveals the truth about him. The fall of a royal is never quiet, but few have fallen with as much noise or disgrace as Prince Andrew. Once hailed as the Queen's favorite son, he now stands as one of the most scandal-stained figures in the monarchy's history. In 2023, the crown itself cut ties, stripping him of his honorary military titles and silencing the use of His Royal Highness. For a man raised on privilege, it was a public humiliation unlike anything the House of Windsor had ever seen. But while the world focused on lawsuits, headlines, and rumored connections to Jeffrey Epstein, another story was brewing. Not one born in courtrooms or tabloids, but within the palace walls themselves. A story told not by lawyers or journalists, but by someone who lived in the shadows of his daily life, his former maid. Her name is Charlotte Briggs. And what she revealed about Prince Andrew is enough to make the scandals already attached to his name look tame. So what did Charlotte Briggs say? Keep watching to find out. Charlotte entered Buckingham Palace in 1996, a 21-year-old from Yorkshire who thought she'd landed a once-in-a-lifetime role. At first, she was tasked with routine duties, cleaning offices, taking out bins, and even sharing small human moments with royals who treated her kindly. She remembered Prince Edward holding the door open for her, an act of courtesy she hadn't expected. For 6 months, her job was simple. Then came the assignment no one wanted, serving Prince Andrew. What should have been a mark of trust quickly revealed itself as a nightmare. Andrew was 36 at the time, newly divorced from Sarah Ferguson, and living back in the palace on what was known as the nursery floor. Yet despite being a grown man, a military veteran, and a prince of the realm, his behavior, according to Charlotte, was more like that of a spoiled child than a war hero. She recalled her first taste of his temper, a rant over curtains. Andrew, seated just a few feet away, demanded she run up and down stairs to adjust them until they were exactly how he liked. When a sliver of light peeked through the top, his fury exploded. "Can't you do anything right?" he barked. Charlotte was left in tears, shocked that something so trivial could provoke such rage. This, she explained, was not an isolated incident. Tantrums were part of the job. His bed had to be turned down with military precision, pillows embroidered with the royal crest placed in the exact center, pajamas laid out neatly, and most bizarre of all, his teddy bears positioned just so. Miss a step, and Andrew would erupt. It wasn't just the demands that unsettled her. It was hypocrisy. This man fought in the Falklands, she remembered thinking. Yet he couldn't even close his own curtains. By contrast, other royals exuded dignity. Charles and Edward, she said, were wonderful. Princess Anne kept her distance but showed quiet respect. Andrew, however, was the rotten apple, the one who spoilt what could have been the job of a lifetime. Still, there were surreal moments. Charlotte earned £600 a month and even found herself standing on the royal balcony during Trooping the Colour. She was hugged by Nelson Mandela, a memory she cherished. But behind the grandeur, her daily reality was dominated by Andrew's petty demands. And then there was Sarah Ferguson. Despite their divorce in 1992, Charlotte claimed Andrew kept his ex-wife close in spirit, if not in body. His wardrobe, she alleged, still held her wedding dress. Her makeup remained neatly laid out on his dressing table, as though she might walk back in at any moment. For Charlotte, it was unsettling, a sign he hadn't let go, even as the world assumed he had moved on. Her stories didn't surface immediately. They came years later, in 2022, just as Andrew's life imploded under the weight of Virginia Giuffre's lawsuit. Giuffre alleged she was trafficked by Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and forced to have sex with Andrew when she was a teenager. Andrew denied it fiercely, but the damage was done. Against this backdrop, Charlotte spoke out, her memories adding another layer to the portrait of a man who demanded loyalty but offered little humanity in return. And Charlotte wasn't alone in exposing the strange inner world of the Duke of York. Former palace guard Paul Page corroborated her accounts in an ITV documentary, Ghislaine, Prince Andrew, and the Pedophile. He revealed Andrew's obsession with stuffed toys, claiming his bed was covered with 50 or 60 of them. Maids were given a laminated diagram showing the exact placement of each bear. If one was out of order, Andrew's temper would explode. Even outsiders noticed. Writer Elizabeth Day recalled visiting Buckingham Palace in 2019, where she waited in a corridor opposite an oversized teddy bear perched on a chair. When she later asked Andrew about it, he laughed and explained it was a wedding gift from Sarah Ferguson. What might have seemed quirky in another context suddenly seemed strange when layered onto years of testimony about his childish demands. Through Charlotte's eyes, the myth of royal dignity crumbled. Andrew wasn't just a disgraced prince facing legal battles. He was, in her words, a bad apple, a man so consumed by entitlement that even the simplest tasks became someone else's burden. Her account was a glimpse behind the gilded curtain, and it was anything but flattering. For Buckingham Palace, silence was the chosen response. When pressed about Charlotte's claims, no comment came. It was the same tactic used for years: ignore, outlast, and hope the noise fades. But times have changed. Silence, once a shield, now amplifies suspicion. What makes Charlotte's revelation so powerful isn't just their content, but their timing. They surfaced at Andrew's lowest point, when public opinion had already turned against him. Her words reinforced the narrative that the man who once stood proudly beside his mother on the balcony was not a victim of circumstance, but an architect of his own downfall. As damning as Charlotte's account was, it wasn't the only one. King Charles's bold move. The Duchess of Kent's funeral, held on September 16, 2025, senior members of the royal family arrived in somber black, the Prince of Wales and the Princess Royal, each embodying the weight of royal duty in a time of loss. But in the days that followed, it was not the ceremony itself that captured the nation's attention. It was a fleeting 7-second moment involving Prince Andrew, the disgraced Duke of York, and his former wife, Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York. The short clip, filmed outside St. George's Chapel, showed Andrew speaking to Sarah in what seemed like a brief, cheerful exchange. Harmless gestures on any ordinary day, but devastating in this context. As the rest of the royal family stood in mourning, Andrew appeared relaxed, even amused. Within hours, those few seconds would ignite a storm. The footage began spreading across social media almost instantly. By midnight, it had reached 2 million views. The caption on one viral post read simply, "He's laughing at a funeral." Major newspapers and broadcasters seized on the story. The Guardian described the moment as a stunning lapse of judgment, while the Telegraph called it an optical nightmare for a monarchy already under strain. Within 48 hours, a private meeting was called at Clarence House. Present were King Charles, Prince William, and Princess Anne. The agenda was short but explosive: the future of the Yorks. The sprawling 30-room mansion in Windsor that Prince Andrew has occupied since 2003. Once the cherished home of the late Queen Mother, it had come to symbolize royal privilege and excess. Maintaining the property costs millions of pounds each year. As one palace insider reportedly told The Times, the funeral was the tipping point. For months, the king carried on with the same poise and composure that had defined him for years. He smiled before cameras, shook hands with dignitaries, and performed his royal duties as if everything were perfectly fine. The world saw a confident monarch, calm, graceful, and steady. But those who looked a little closer could tell that something had changed. There were signs, small at first. His once brisk walk became slower. Behind the king's decision lies a broader plan, a quiet but determined effort to reshape the monarchy for a new era. King Charles has often been described as favoring a slimmed-down monarchy, one focused on duty, not drama, service, not scandal. Found herself once again in the headlines as old emails resurfaced linking her to the late financier Jeffrey Epstein. In the wake of renewed attention, several charities associated with her quietly paused their collaborations. Financially and reputationally, the Yorks are seen as a liability. And now, according to sources close to the Crown Estate, a new term has appeared in internal documents about Royal Lodge: status review. No official statement has yet been made. Buckingham Palace has declined to comment. But within the corridors of Windsor, whispers are growing louder. If the rumors are true, this would be the first time in modern royal history. Such an act would mark a bold and unprecedented step. Perhaps King Charles's most decisive move yet as he works to redefine what the royal family represents in the 21st century. Once one of the royal family's most celebrated figures during the glittering 1980s when he married Sarah Ferguson in a ceremony watched by millions, his reputation has since crumbled under the weight of scandal and misjudgment. His military titles have been stripped. Royal Lodge, once his sanctuary, may soon become his last battle. The mansion, with its grand gardens and memories of royal history, has been under scrutiny since early summer. The king's advisors have been reviewing its financial and structural state, noting that it costs millions annually to maintain, money that few believe Andrew can honestly provide. A monarchy in transition, caught between centuries of tradition and the relentless glare of modern media. The world no longer waits for palace statements. It reacts in real time to 7-second clips, viral hashtags, and online outrage. The funeral video may have lasted just 7 seconds, but its impact has stretched far beyond that. What seemed like a fleeting, harmless exchange has forced a confrontation inside the royal household, one about responsibility, image, and the future of the crown itself. For King Charles, the decision represents something deeper. Which of these royal stories affected you the most? Do you believe King Charles made the right decision about Andrew, or should family loyalty have come first? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.